Our next company here is IRLAB Therapeutics, and it's the CEO, Nicholas Waters, that will be presenting. So without further ado, Nicholas, I'll leave the word over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us in this interesting conversation today. And this new format, it's kind of different, but fun anyway. IRLAB Therapeutics, if we just look at slide 2, the disclaimer, that's something you need to take into consideration when looking at our company. Slide number 3. In short, biotech working to improve lives for Parkinson patients in general. We have a very strong focus on CNS, but in particular Parkinson's disease. To generate our drug candidates, we have developed a specific discovery platform, which we call the Integrative Screening Platform. It's a proprietary technology which is based on systems biology and to some extent modern machine learning algorithms to discover and develop our compounds. At present, we have 2 leading clinical programs in phase 2. One is called mesdopetam. It's formerly IRL-790. It's to treat motor complications in Parkinson's disease, in mid to late stage Parkinson's disease. And those complications are called L-DOPA-induced dyskinesias. I'll come back to that. And then we have IRL-752, which is intended to treat one of the biggest problems for Parkinson's patients, and that is the postural dysfunction and the tendency to fall and have an impaired balance. In addition to that, we have a number of pipeline candidates. We are currently listed on Nasdaq Stockholm First North Premier. We are moving or on our route to the Stockholm main market at present. Next slide, please. That's slide number 4. Today there are around 6 million patients in the world diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Actually, it's closing up to 7 right now. And it's expected, we're expecting to have around 13 to 14 million patients around 2040. So this is, in the true sense, a pandemic right now, and it has to do with the shift in demographics around the world. We're getting older. Age is the most strongly correlated factor to developing Parkinson's disease. The burden of the disease is quite heavy on society and especially on the patients and their families. There are a number of studies out there indicating the potential cost for the treatment of Parkinson's disease, and it's around $50,000 per year in the US a couple of years back. We expect that to increase with a number of new treatments coming in as well over the forthcoming 5 to 6 year period. The Parkinson's disease has been known for many, many years. The first real effective treatment came in the late 50s, early 60s, was discovered by the Swedish scientist Arvid Carlsson, who later received the Nobel Prize for those discoveries. But besides treating the basic symptoms of Parkinson's disease, that is the rigidity, the hypoactivity, the pores droop, the tremors, there is also a number of issues which are not treated today. And number 1 on the list is the impaired balance and the falls. Tendency to fall, and these falls are of course extremely costly for the patient and for society. The falls are coupled to what is called cognitive decline, that is a loss of cognitive function over the course of the disease. And then of course motor complications associated with the treatment, the L-DOPA treatment, is a big problem. In addition to that, there are a number of psychiatric symptoms such as psychosis and anxiety, which needs to be addressed in a better way. And that is what we are doing. We are addressing these problems by means of our discovery platform. That's slide number 6. Are you there? Yeah. Slide number 6. We have built a systems biology-based discovery platform, which supports our discovery of novel molecules, truly novel molecules, which have beneficial effects at the system level, and that is our priority. And it also supports the translational aspects of clinical development in a very strong way. Over the years, we have generated a number of clinical candidates and programs which are still out there in the world in different pipelines by means of this technology. Slide number 7 illustrates to some extent the portfolio of programs we have, and we have currently the most focus on Mesdopetam and IRL752, and Mesdopetam is intended to treat LIDs, levodopa-induced dyskinesias, and these are troublesome involuntary movements which occur during the course of L-dopa treatment. And we have discovered Mesdopetam as a preventive and a treating method to actually help these patients from having these symptoms. IRL752 is there to improve balance and reduce the risk of falls, and thereby easing the lives of these patients. And then we have a number of programs in at the preclinical stage. That's 942/2009, which is intended for age-related disorders. We haven't publicly announced any specific indication yet. And then we have the P003 program, where we are looking at early stages of Parkinson as well, novel treatments to start treatment with just after diagnosis. We are working on slide 8. We have just a number of individuals here who have been supporting our programs over the past years. Besides the roughly 19 people working in the company, we of course have a network of experts and advisors outside of the company supporting us. And these are people with long experience, both from the FDA and the EMA, but also from the clinical world of Parkinson's disease. Slide number 9 summarizes the status of the program, the Mesdopetam program. This is a new chemical entity where we have a specific target. It's the dopamine D3 receptor. WHO and have proposed a new generic name for this molecule, Mesdopetam. We have globally issued patents, and we expect to be able to defend those patents until 37-ish. In the preclinical and clinical studies we have performed, we have defined the dose range. We have a clear safety and tolerability ratios, which are really, really good with this program. And we have solid translational evidence for the indication. And the coming program here, phase 2b/3, and the phase 3 program is under development together with our scientific advisors. Slide number 10. Just to go back for a second to the WHO INN, who have proposed the generic name Mesdopetam. The name indicates that this is the first in a completely new class, and that is actually defined by the suffix dopetam. This has a number of implications. This means that this is a new class, a new type of treatment, which can clearly add value to the patients and the healthcare system around the world. And also it confirms our ability to discover and develop novel things with innovative steps in them. If we go to slide 11, we go back a number of years in time and look a little bit about the background of Parkinson treatment. This is a study that was published in the early 2000s. Actually, the first dose-response study for L-dopa, a treatment strategy that's been in place since, as I said, the 60s. And it illustrates the complications of treating with L-dopa. And A number of different doses were tested, and the best dose to treat Parkinson is the highest dose. The problem there is that patients develop dyskinesias. These are these involuntary, troublesome movements at a very high rate. 16.5% of the patients in this study expressed dyskinesias already after 40 weeks of treatment. Generally, you say it takes around 6 to 7 years to develop the dyskinesias in patients. But if you push the dose of L-DOPA early, then you'll get earlier into this complication. That has meant that patients are actually undertreated today. They are treated mostly with the 300 milligram per day dose, and that means they go undertreated. This is, of course, hampering their ability to live their daily lives. So there is a big need for treatments that could allow optimal levodopa treatment and prevent LIDs at the same time. So that's the background to our thinking around this program. About 30%, slide number 12, sorry. About 30% of patients develop these complications. And once occurred, there is a big problem. This limits the optimization of the treatment. So it becomes very, very cumbersome for the patients and their physicians to actually control motor function in a good way. At a given moment, there is around 500,000 patients suffering on a daily basis from these complications. Looking at the competition, there is one registered product in the area, and judging by the pricing of this product, it's based on amantadine, which was discovered also in the 70s or 60s actually as an antiviral compound, but it actually showed up to have some effects on Parkinson's disease. This was reformulated and tested a couple of years ago and approved. And it's priced at around $28,000 to $30,000 per year. So there is an interest in paying for treatments for these patients. The problem with amantadine is that there is a lot of side effects. About 30% of the patients have intolerable side effects. Slide number 13 illustrates a graph that illustrates the objective of the program. What we're trying to do here, one looks at the 24-hour cycle for one of these patients, is that they sleep around 8 hours a day. They are off, that is in principle before they take their morning L-DOPA. They're off 4 hours a day. And then they have what's called good on time. That is with healthy functioning, healthy motor functioning, and they can do what they want to do in their daily life. But then that turns into bad on time, around 6 hours a day. And the bad on time is on time with dyskinesias. So you can see 50% of the moving day is basically hampered by the dyskinesias. And what we try to do with mesdopetam is to, as you see in the right-hand circle, is to reduce the bad on time and increase the good on time as much as possible. And this is the ultimate goal for, in principle, any Parkinson treatment. But here we are looking at specifically reducing on time with troublesome dyskinesia and improve good on time. How does this compound work then? Slide number 14. In Parkinson's disease, you lose transmission of dopamine in the deep parts of the brain, in the basal ganglia. And that's illustrated in the second picture here, picture number 2. There's a loss of dopamine. You lose activity in two different pathways that controls motor, the D1 pathway and the D2 pathway, which controls motor function. And there should be a balance between these two, and there should be a healthy activity in these pathways. It's been well described in literature since many years back that you lose dopamine in the disorder. And the basic strategy is to replenish that by adding L-DOPA, which is converted to dopamine in the brain. And that is illustrated in picture number 3. And you get back the activity in the D1 and the D2 pathways. However, slide 4 illustrates what happens after a number of weeks or years of treatment. And that is that in the D1 pathway, the dopamine D3 receptor occurs. And together with D1, it actually creates an overactivity of that pathway. So there's an imbalance between the two counterbalancing pathways controlling motor function. And in picture 5, you see when we block the D3 receptor, we take that out of the play, we get back to a normal balance between D1 and D2, and thus create a normal function on motor function as possible. That is the mechanism of action. And what have we shown then in a number of trials? We've done a phase 1b and a phase 2a study, exploratory studies, looking at, first of all, finding doses and also efficacy. And what we can see here in the table, which we have presented before, but it illustrates clearly that we can actually, by means of treating with mesdopetam or IRL-790, we can reduce the hours with dyskinesia almost to up to 3 hours, to 2.7, 2.6 hours is the reduction of time spent with troublesome dyskinesia. And that is actually directly translated into good on time in these patients. Slide number 16 illustrates the program we have taken this compound through. First of all, of course, the preclinical discovery and development program, and then phase 1, single ascending dosing, multiple ascending dosing. It was found to be well tolerated and very safe, this compound, and with good pharmacokinetic properties. We took it through a phase 1b study, which has been published in Nature recently, Nature Parkinson Disease. And then more recently, we completed a phase 2a study where we actually conclude that we have clinically meaningful and quantitatively impressive effects on dyskinesias, which is translated into good on. And the side effect profile, which was in that study on par with placebo. So we're right now in the startup phase of a phase 2b/3 study, where we're going to look more carefully at the dose range, but also look at good on as the primary endpoint. Following that study, of course, there is a total program with hopefully one phase 3 study, and also a psychosis study, which we plan to place in parallel with the phase 3 study for LIDS. Slide number 17. We switch gears a little bit and go into the falls issue. And this is a major issue. This is the largest problem, according to a number of surveys done internationally for these patients. The falling is a really impairing factor for these patients. There are two things around that. That is fear of falling. You're actually afraid of falling, so you don't walk around. You don't do what you could do otherwise. And you fall and you break yourself in various ways, which is, of course, very complicates life enormously. The reasons for this then is it has to do with the cognitive decline. It has nothing to do with loss of strength or things like that. It's a clear correlation with the cognitive decline, which leads to impaired balance and then later on falls. If we look at slide 18, the program is also based on a new chemical entity with a new mechanism of action. We have patent issued in all major markets, and these we think we can defend until roughly 2040. We have been in contact with WHO INN to get a INN name, of course, and they have actually proposed a new name for this class, as indicating that this is also representing of a new class of treatments for Parkinson's disease. This is today unpublished. They publish very seldom, I think twice a year. So we'll wait until they publish it. but in principle, a new class in the dawn also here. We have taken this through a phase 2A study as well, where we have promising improvements on postural stability and reductions in falls. The efficacy indicates the cortical mode of action that we need, and it's very good translation from the preclinical studies that we've done. If we look at the population here, this is a larger population of, that's slide 19. And we, around half of the patients, they fall frequently. And the risk of falling is 2 to 3 times higher in this population than age-matched healthy people. And we have around 1 million people on a daily basis at risk of falling with the disease. The cost of one of those falls, which ends up in the hospital, is around $30,000 in the US. That's only one fall. So, and this is an untapped market. There is no competition in the global pipeline at present that we can see. If we look at the mechanism of action, this goes higher up in the brain. Slide number 20. We have the healthy state where we have both norepinephrine and dopamine working finely tuned together in the frontal cortex depicted in the brain there. In Parkinson, you lose these also in the cortex, but with 752, we can actually restore neurotransmission in these pathways in the frontal cortex, and we have shown in a number of preclinical studies and also in clinical studies that we can actually restore cognitive function and improve balance. If we look at slide 21, which depicts some of the data from the recent phase 2A study, the left-hand slide illustrates the reduction in balance problems. So that's an improvement in balance in these patients. And in the right-hand side, this is clearly followed by a reduced frequency of falling in these patients that we treated. We have about a 50% reduction in falling, and a clinically meaningful reduction has been defined as 25% reduction in risk of falling. Slide 22. Key conclusions from this program, which has also been published in Movement Disorder recently, the phase 2A study, shows that we can improve postural stability and balance. We have a reduced fall frequency. We also see effects on neuropsychiatric symptoms such as apathy and a tendency towards a cognitive impairment in only a 4-week study, which is promising. And results were predicted by the preclinical ISP platform. The program has now entered into, we've been through the phase 2A, that's slide 23. We have been through phase 2A. We are planning for a phase 2B study to study falls, and that's an international study, US, EU, to start soon. So, slide 24, the positioning of these programs. These are first-in-class drug candidates by definition and confirmed by WHO. We have novel mechanism of actions. As far as we can see, we're 4 to 5 years ahead of competitors with these mechanisms, and especially in the falls indication, there is nothing in the pipeline. And of course, these are large markets, unmet needs, and there's a willingness to pay for such products. Thank you.
Excellent. So thank you very much for that, Nicholas. So we'll keep the Q&A session quite short here. So just the final question here. So given that Parkinson's disease is a chronic disease, safety and durability of response becomes key factors to look out for. Could you comment briefly on how the treatment duration of the clinical trials has been so far, and what signals you've seen in terms of safety in these studies? There is no indication of any loss of effect over time. We've done 4-week studies, and we're now moving into 3-month studies, as 12-week studies. Usually what you see over time with treatments such as these is that you actually increase the effect over time.
needs to be proven, but that's the likely outcome. The safety and tolerability is excellent with this. We have very, very large safety and tolerability margins for these compounds.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Nicholas. So in the interest of time, we'll have to cut it short there a bit with the questions. And thank you very much for participating. And thank you everyone for listening. And we will move on with our busy schedule today. Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having us.